Hi, I'm Jose from Sophos Support. Today we'll be talking about Google Directory Service for Sophos Email. Google Directory is a web application that synchronizes Active Directory objects from Google Workspace to Sophos Central. Sophos Central then uses this connection to store crucial details such as user profiles, email addresses, group information, and shared contacts specific to your organization. The information is then used for automatic user and mailbox creation. This is necessary because a mailbox alias for each user should exist in Sophos Email before it will allow relaying to and from the email address. In this video, I'll take you through the setup and synchronization of Google Directory into Sophos Central, as well as show you the features and options you'll have within Sophos Email. Before diving in, make sure you're a Central Super Admin to configure directory sources, synchronization frequency, and filters. You must also have a Sophos email license and must be a Google Workspace admin to authorize Central for retrieving user mailbox information from Google Directory. Lastly, if you're a new Google Workspace customer, you may have to turn off the Disable Service Account Key Creation setting. This was enabled on all new accounts starting in May 2024. If this applies to you, refer to the link in the video description for a full step-by-step guide. Now, let's move on to the setup process. In Sophos Central, go to My Products, General Settings, Directory Service. Click on Add Directory Service. In the pop-up, fill in the name. The description is optional. Under Directory Type, choose Google Directory. Then, add the Google Directory domain that you want to sync. Click Next to continue to the Google configuration page. Here, you can set the synchronization frequency to hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, or if you only want to synchronize on demand, choose None. The View Instructions link takes you to the documentation page relevant to this TechVid. Now, before clicking Connect, ensure you accept the two Google API Terms of Service. Make sure to open each link and accept the terms. You can close each respective window once you've accepted. Now, click Connect. If you aren't logged into your Google Workspace admin account, you'll be prompted to log in. It's critical to check the box to grant Sophos permission to access your Google account. This gives Sophos the ability to view, edit, configure, and delete your Google Cloud data, as well as access the address associated with your Google account. Click Continue to start the process. Once completed, you'll see a confirmation that the connection has been set up. Next, we need to add a new API client in Google Workspace. First, copy the Google OAuth client ID. Switch to your Google Workspace. Then, go to Security, Access and Data Control, API Controls. Click Manage Domain-Wide Delegation. Next, click Add New and paste the client ID. Return to Sophos Central and copy the value for OAuth scopes. Go back to the Google Workspace and paste this in. Click Authorize to finish adding the new client ID. This grants Sophos Central control over the API, enabling it to read and obtain user and mailbox information from Google Directory for synchronization. Go back to Sophos Central and test the connection. Once the connection's verified, click Save. You can now configure filters to set how Sophos Central syncs the information from Google Workspace. Choosing all users and groups will synchronize everything within the domain. Selecting Add Users by Group lets you filter users within specified groups. These include display name, email address, proxy address, or email owner. If you want the most granular way of adding users, pick the Add Users by User filter, as this has the most specific criteria of the three. For example, adding users based on gender or organizational unit path. Now that we've set up synchronization, let's look at what you can do afterwards. I'll now discuss the available options when Google Directory Service is both turned on and turned off. I'll begin with the actions possible with synchronization on. When turned on, the Synchronize button is now visible on the far left. Clicking this will force a manual synchronization. The Test Connection button verifies contact with Google Directory Services and ensures correct settings in Sophos Central and Google. View the Settings tab to see the current synchronization settings. Now, let's look at what can be done while synchronization is turned off. On the far left, the Synchronize button is no longer active and the More button is now available. Click on More to access the Purge Data and Delete options. Purge Data removes the previously synchronized users and mailboxes, resetting all groups and associated policies for the domain. When doing this, you'll see a warning. Check the box to acknowledge that purging data can't be undone. Then, you can click Purge Data. Going back to the More tab, choosing Delete removes the directory service and all associated settings from Sophos Central. To proceed, you may need to perform the purge and disconnect actions, following the prompts as needed. Clicking Disconnect Now will sever the connection between Sophos Central and Google. This revokes the access to the Google account granted to Sophos during the previous setup process. Click Preview to see a preview of your configuration. This fetches the current user information from Google Directory. The Preview tab displays the info, which will be updated into Sophos email. This is useful for testing various filter combinations. The Revert button clears the Preview tab info and resets the sync filter settings to all users and groups. Now, let's go back to the Settings tab. As mentioned earlier, the Test Connection button is used to check if Sophos Central can communicate with Google Directory Services and if the settings are accurate on both sides. Finally, we get to the filters, which we recommend setting up to avoid unnecessary usage of licenses. There are several ways to retrieve the correct user and mailbox information. I'll show you a few examples, starting with the Add Users by Group filter. Let's go to the Google Directory user page. Here, I'll filter for the first name, new user. The results show 3 users. However, if I switch to the Groups page, only new user 1 is part of the group, testlab_palad3. Note, the group name in Google Directory is equivalent to the display name in Sophos Central. So if I want to sync new user 1, but not the other 2 users, I can add a filter to retrieve data from this group only. Back in Sophos Central, the filter is set to all users and groups. If I preview this, all 3 users are shown. Returning to the Settings tab, I'll create a group filter. There are 2 filtering options. All requires every condition to be met, while Any will retrieve data if any one of the conditions are met. I'll add a condition and specify the group. This can be display name, email, any proxy address, or owner email. In this case, I'll choose display name and enter the name from the directory. Click Add Group if you want to group several conditions together. For more information about conditions and groups, refer to the linked documentation. Once the filter is configured, click Save, and then preview the result. And now, we only see new user 1. Next, I'll show you an example of filtering by a more specific attribute. I'll select Add Users by User filter. Then, I'll add a condition and filter for the surname, testlab. Checking the directory, there's only 1 user with the surname, testlab. The other 2 are testlab123. I'll set the filter and click Save. In the preview, only new user 1's been added. If I now add another surname filter, with testlab123, the preview now shows all 3 users. Customize your filters to achieve the desired results. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to check out the documentation for this video in the video description. For further assistance, view and post questions on community.sophos.com. And go to techvids.sophos.com for more great videos like this one.